Hi everyone, welcome to day one of NetElixir's 3-day webinar series on e-commerce growth. Today we're going to talk about SEO framework to optimize the buyer journey. My name is Shannon Kelly and I am NetElixir's digital marketing coordinator. We're very excited to have you here with us today as we empower your e-commerce growth. Before we kick it off, I just kind of want to give a little bit of background into why we're having e-commerce growth week and why you see Einstein's face across all of our marketing for this event. So last Sunday, March 14th, was Pi Day and Albert Einstein's birthday, a day that we at NetElixir take very seriously. Albert Einstein is NetElixir's inspiration, mainly because we both call Princeton home, but more importantly, because he had a deeply curious and inquisitive nature, and he was always asking why and never stopped learning. 2021 also marks the 100th anniversary of Albert Einstein winning the Nobel Prize for Physics, where he helped humanity view the world through a different lens. We at NetElixir aim to change the approach to your overall e-commerce strategy by helping you see how all the different pieces of your strategies fit together into one cohesive brand identity. Most importantly, like Einstein, we at NetElixir aim to never stop learning and never stop growing. Today, we will be discussing rethinking your SEO and content strategy with Silas Gossman, our SEO account manager, and Shelby Simon, our director of content strategy. Tomorrow, I hope you join us again to learn how to build a high-performance e-commerce website with NetElixir and Viva, and on Thursday to learn about strategies for driving exponential sales growth on Amazon marketplaces. The link that you use to join today's webinar will be live to join Wednesdays and Thursdays, so join us again at the same time, same place. Today, we're discussing how to construct a narrative around your buyer's journey, the SEO framework required to do so, and how to increase visibility for each touch point to build authority, better your site navigation, and ultimately win more conversions. Before we dive in, I just want to give a little bit of background to NetElixir. For over 17 years, we have helped e-commerce brands find and engage their high-value customers and acquire game-changing insights using our customer analytics platform, Elixir Insights. To the left, you will see some of our e-commerce growth solutions, and up top, some of the companies that we are proud to partner with, including UPS, Google, Bing, and Facebook. And below are some of our clients that we have the privilege of working with. As you can see, they vary from food to fashion. Finally, I just want to remind everyone that at the end of this webinar, please take a moment to complete our short survey to share your thoughts. Your feedback greatly helps us improve each and every session. And if you can follow us on social, to please continue the conversation, keep up to date with the latest events and news from NetElixir, and to meet some of the team working to make all this magic happen. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Silas to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Shannon. Before I go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of this, I want to dive into what we have as really the core framework of NetElixir's overall approach to SEO. And what we have here before us, if we break down, is essentially 5 columns that sort of give us 5 key areas wherein we can try to drive performance, enhance performance. And below each column is an itemized piece that we use as essentially a lever that we know drives performance in the given column. Now, I won't get into everything that we have here, but I will get into 2 specific columns to focus on, those being authority and usability. Specifically within those columns, focusing on on-page content, blogs, citations and links for authority, and on the right, usability, specific areas of focus within that column being UX, and conversion rate optimization, CRO, and at the bottom you see there, funnel optimization. These 2 columns really do represent a lot of the key in terms of making sure we are really driving conversions with our content, with our rankings in the correct and most optimized manner. All right. So for the next one.
First, we're just going to launch a quick poll question. So let me pull that up. So at what point on the buyer's journey do you see the most drop-off? I'll just give it about 5 more seconds. All right, so it looks like about 60% of you said that in the middle of the funnel is when you see the most drop off. So I'm going to hand it back over to Silas so he can discuss how to minimize customers dropping off then and ultimately every point.
Right. Thanks, Shannon.
Sorry.
All right. Now, before I get into essentially how to minimize drop off, essentially we're going to break down those 3 areas of the buyer's journey into 3 key touch points of the buyer's journey. So really when we think about ranking, we also want to think about capturing intent, right? Older form SEO, the drive was capturing ranking for industry relevant terms. And that can still be part of it, but really modern SEO, what will really drive future SEO is a lot more about capturing user intent. So not just literal definition of perhaps a key term or phrase, but really the user's intent behind that term, which can vary from audience to audience. So ensuring we're capturing that intent and placing it in the right touch points along key points of the buyer's journey, that's what really allows us to make sure we're not just getting the right visibility, getting in front of those audience members, but we're actually converting them with the right information in the right place at the right time. Next. Right. So first area to think about, that top of funnel area. What we really think about here is tracking and implementing high opportunity informational based terms and implementing those across core pages or really top of funnel pages. So really those blogs, those articles, homepage, about us page, perhaps some types of specific FAQ pages, making sure that those pages are winning authority for informational based terms, buyers not quite ready to buy, still in the stage where they want to learn more about a product, type of product, or a product that can complete a job for us. Now, by posting that type of content, and let me be clear here, when I say content in terms of SEO, I mean all forward-facing elements on a page, not just the words, but placement of CTAs, image use, all those forward-facing elements that really make up the user experience of a site. So making sure we're winning at that touch point in such a way where we not only get users on the page, but those users then in turn want to share some of those pages through their own feeds, right? Getting us the proper kind of backlink authority, Google seeing that we have quality pages along those lines, getting us Google links through rich snippets, featured snippets, FAQ snippets, any of those type of above the fold rich card search results. Those are what really give us the authority and make sure that we place ourselves as an authority in a given field. It can help us push people along from that first touch point to the next touch point. Next slide. Right. So here we have navigational, right? Which can be really streamlined through solid UX audits, right? So not only ensuring that we have the right content on site, we have excellent use of our category pages to ensure that they're easily understood, or excellent use of our top navigation to make sure that it makes sense to a user, really matches user behavior. But we also have at each individual touch point from there on, as many options for a user as possible, right? So we have important things like related products. We have important things like being able to check out later if we want, save cart for later. We have important options like being able to edit items from cart, right? All those mid-funnel things that a lot of you seem to have identified as problem areas. Essentially, a lot of what SEO wants to do here is not just rank for the right broader, but still slightly more focused, less than informational, almost ready to buy terms, but also provide the options, give our users options for finding related products, saving products, right? That's a lot of what can retain those users and reduce abandonment of site, bounce rate. Next one. Right. So lastly, we have the transaction-based terms, people that are ready to buy, what may be a lot more of the branded terms ranking for in SERPs, right? Bottom of funnel. Now here, typically we have a more loyal audience base, perhaps returning, less likely drop off. But again, it's very important to have a maximized level of options for users from this point. And also, in order to maintain returning users, good post-sale options, right? Those email follow-ups, those thank you pages, those offerings for discounts, right? Or again, the ability to edit options from cart or to add more items to cart. Really, all those cart-related user options that make the actual shopping experience more pleasant, right? Giving a more pleasant experience in order to make sure we're capturing that audience and converting from category pages, product pages, and getting that final conversion, right? Next one. Now, just to give an idea of how SEO really in a modern sense works beyond just ranking for terms, we do have a case study here of a client in pet industry where for the longest time they had the traffic, they were getting the ranking, they had the sessions, they had the users, but they didn't have the conversion. Therefore, they didn't have the transactions or the revenue. So in tandem with making sure we were driving ranking for industry relevant terms on the right pages, right, matching user intent behind search terms, we also had a very strong focus on optimizing user experience on all the key touch points in the buyer's journey, from that initial landing page to a category page, to a product page, to a checkout page, having all the best options, best practices in place to ensure it was streamlined from landing to final checkout and follow-up. Now, because of these converted or concerted efforts, you can see there, as of later last year, the year-over-year results, because of all these efforts, was a 40% increase in overall conversion, a 28% increase in overall number of transactions, and a 24% increase in overall revenue. So we're actually able to capitalize on increased traffic and actually have quality converting traffic based on that ranking, rather than ranking standing alone. We also had the user intent captured.
And when you're thinking of your strategic content strategy, we always recommend following our approach to content, which we've deemed the VAST methodology. This stands for your brand voice and knowledge, your audience understanding and development, so not just how your brand sounds and your brand tone, but also how your audience wants to be spoken to and what they find valuable. Telling a cohesive story across everything that you do. And then, of course, testing to make sure you're really optimizing your content and incorporating learnings and insights from across everything you do for e-commerce. When we think about the VAST methodology in relation to the buyer's journey, the first thing we want to think about is information. And we want to start by really thinking about your brand. In this case, at the top of the funnel, we should be really focused on what makes you unique, what's different about your brand. In addition to thinking about that brand voice, also we really want to think about audience. When we're in the information stage of a buyer's journey, it's really important to balance those two. And some good types of content to include here are blogs, listicles, how-to, really making sure that everything that you do is really optimized for not just search engine optimization, but also conversion rate optimization and user experience design. Once you've balanced the audience and voice components of the VAST methodology, also make sure you're really writing for humans. We want to make sure any piece of content at this stage is informative, interesting, and engaging. And these are some questions that you can ask yourself when thinking about your brand to really help position you in this stage of the buyer's journey. Now moving on to navigation. When we're at this point for content, some of the things to incorporate are, in addition to brand and audience, thinking about your hero products and some potentially hero categories. So when you're on your website, you can take a look at your core brand pages, but then also think about, how am I driving conversions by prioritizing certain things that I know those real shoppers are looking for? Ask yourself what barriers to conversion exist. Are you creating user friction by not having informative or engaging content somewhere where you really should? Two pieces of data to consider here are bounce rate and time on site. This stage of the buyer journey is a great place to think of the T in the VAST methodology and test, and then test some more, so that you're really making sure you can learn and grow as users are navigating through not just your site, but your content experience overall. And then last but certainly not least, when we are at the bottom of the funnel and we are thinking about conversion, this is where you really want to make sure that your story has a good conclusion, as every story should. Speak directly to converters. Maybe you need a live chat, or you want to have targeted ads of any kind to someone who is in this stage or who has recently converted. And a little interesting tip here is to think about this as an opportunity to modernize your thank you page message. If you have someone who has checked out on your site, they are a very captive audience. Almost everyone, when purchasing something, pauses to make sure that the page is actually, there, and they're like, okay, good, I got my purchase, I'm excited, or this is fulfilling a need that I have. Think of this as an opportunity to show the team behind the brand or to have a personalized thank you message. It's a really fantastic opportunity to do something different and have your brand stand out in a way that is unique and truthful and authentic. And you just aren't losing out on a fun opportunity to thank your really valuable shoppers. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Thank you. And thanks, Silas. So please take a moment to submit any questions that you might have to our Q&A. And while you're submitting your questions, I'd like to take a moment to invite everyone to download our latest ebook called How to Choose the Right CMS Platform for Your E-commerce Brand. This ebook considers the SEO advantages and disadvantages of Shopify, Magento, and BigCommerce. You can download at the link below, and I'll drop that link in the chat as well to make it easier to click and paste. And now we move on to the Q&A portion of our webinar. Our first question is directed for Silas. How do you see your SEO strategy evolving over the next 12 months?
Over the next 12 months, first off, it's very important to take into consideration, obviously, the direction of search engines, Google being a big one. And if you look in the latter half of last year, the start of this year, and if you look at upcoming major algorithm updates that Google is making, it's very centered on specifically mobile experience and mobile UX. So a big part of consideration needs to move away from thinking of SEO as specifically desktop ranking or term ranking, or even desktop and mobile as separate, and a lot more about just overall device experience, mobile experience, and overall how you're ranking for mobile terms. So quite a bit, the language in mobile, how people use mobile. That'll be a very big part of SEO moving forward.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question for both Silas and Shelby. How does SEO and content play into your website experience? And what should brands be thinking about as they plan for the future?
In terms of SEO and content, again, I think of content from both the textual portion and just all front-facing visual aspects of a page. But as I mentioned earlier during presentation, a big part of it really is just grabbing at more than just literal definition and ranking those industry terms, making sure you're doing strong research into user intent, right? So really modeling several parts of content within your site around that user intent to create the journey, create the story from initial landing point to that final conversion. So just having an experience in place based around sets of terms that sort of flow into each other, you can even think of it as, that capture all stages of that intent, from initial information seeking to navigation, browsing around a site, to that final conversion, I'm ready to buy. That's a very strong part. And essentially any visuals, imaging, categories of content built around that intent letting the intent of the user sort of drive your ranking, drive your experience.
I absolutely agree with Silas. One additional thing I would encourage everyone to think about is the importance of highlighting your brand values and your why in content. It's going to be more and more critical with time, and not shying away from including that on site, as we know users are looking for it.
Thank you. Another question, what SEO metrics are you currently looking at, and how have they changed over the previous 12 months, if they have changed at all?
So over the last 12 months, one thing that has actually jumped a lot more in terms of metrics looking at is several clients are looking more at average order value. So as they build up a broader client base, more people turning to e-com for purchases in this environment, they're also looking at ways they can make sure they not only retain those customers, make them loyal, returning clients, but also clients that look to them for a broader base of products within a single purchase. So average order value has actually increased in importance. It's always been an important metric, but to make sure we're driving it along with increased audience has become increasingly more important.
Awesome. And then we have one final question for both SEO and content. What are the top 3 things you address when you talk with a brand about enhancing their site experience?
Top 3 things I would say I address. A, make sure you understand your own core identity as a brand. So not being caught up in ranking or speaking to terms just because they're high volume terms and there is a high demand out there, but also ensuring those terms are deeply entangled with your core identity as a brand, your core offerings, your core brands, your core services. So that is a lot easier for you to create the content to speak to those core things, and therefore have content that Google will link to with rich snippets, or that people will read in your social feeds and want to link to and share in their own social feeds, right? And therefore, over time, building that brand authority, building that citation, building those backlinks organically, so you can really develop all based on having a really strong identification of your own core brand and offerings. That would be 1. 2 would be, again, just overall addressing of the core buying experience with UX from start to finish, making sure it's a pleasant experience. That's the best way I know how to put it, is a pleasant experience. Yes, there are several best practices you want to make sure you have in place that can vary, but making sure you are offering options at each stage is really the core of that. Having good options at each stage, more than one buying option. Make sure you have Google Pay, PayPal, credit card, everything up front, really accessible when possible. And the last one I would say is making sure that you have sort of a prioritization in place, right? When you want to speak to all of your products, you need to have a good calendar set as far as like what products you're promoting at what time. Make sure that if your audience has an expectancy that certain products will be promoted what time, you're actually following through on that expectancy. So having a strong calendar in place in terms of your marketing as far as boosting products, boosting traffic to particular products. So understanding your own core identity, creating content around that, optimizing UX in terms of making sure you're giving your buyers as many options as possible. Yeah, those would be the 3 things.
I absolutely agree with Silas. To name 3 different things, I would say the first is to remember that you should always be writing for people. Even if you're writing very technical oriented things, make sure that it's engaging, and remember that you should be focused on what information is critical and that you're trying to share or to build engagement. The second thing is very similar to that, in that you should always be trying to think of user engagement across your site. How will someone engage with this? What content are they consuming? How will they be reading it? And the third one is to try and limit user friction. Anytime there's user friction on a website or on a page, it inevitably negatively impacts a brand. So trying to find that and prevent it is pretty key.
Thank you, Shelby. One more question directed now for Shelby. How do we measure content's influence on sales and revenue?
That's a great question. I think it really ultimately comes down to the brand. We can take a look at specific metrics such as time on site and seeing if increases in time on site are directly correlated to revenue. We can take a look at, did this blog post drive particular sales? We can take a look at brand lift studies, but ultimately it comes down to being very clear about what your content strategy is, having specific goals, and knowing how each component of that plays into different parts of the funnel to drive your brand revenue. So if you're talking about a very upper funnel tactic, it may not directly impact revenue the same way that changing the content on your checkout page will. So it's really important that brands think about having a strategic plan for content the same way they would for any other advertising channel. And in that way, once you're properly goaled out, it's pretty easy to define the metrics that matter. For brands who are looking for somewhere to start, I definitely recommend taking a look at bounce rate, time on site, and then user engagement online for particular pages such as blogs or category pages, which should have very rich content.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby and Silas, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for day one of NetElixir's e-commerce growth week. We look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow to meet with our web development experts. Again, if there are any questions that we did not yet get to answer, please add them to the survey that will appear once this webinar closes. And we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Thank you.